Welcome to the Joy School Podcast. Real talk about what it takes to create your happiest, healthiest, and most dynamic life. And now, here's your host, transformational life coach, happiness strategist, and best-selling author, Kristi Ling Spencer.
Well, hey there, friends. Thank you for being with me for another episode of the show. I am so happy that you're here to hang out with me once again. And if you're new to the show, welcome. I'm so glad you found us. So before I get into today's topic, I want to acknowledge the split energy that is happening right now for so many people with everything that's going on in the world. There are some real tragedies and terrible things happening right now. And I think most all of us are affected in some way. You cannot help but be heavy-hearted and have all kinds of emotions about what's happening in the world. And I've seen quite a few people on social media posting that they feel guilty for having moments of joy or guilty for celebrating a birthday or whatever it is when all this is going on. And so what I wanted to say is that I've been struggling with that too. What's going on right now is extremely difficult, extremely heart-wrenching, and it's leaving a lot of us feeling kind of helpless, right? Or feeling like, wow, it's hard to really enjoy and go have a great day knowing that all this is going on. And what I'd like to say is that split energy is very real. And it's okay to have both sets of feelings. You can be heavy-hearted and have all the compassion and feelings in the world about what's going on and still have moments of joy and happiness and celebration in your life. And they don't have to be exclusive of each other. It is okay to have all the feelings. You don't have to feel all one way. And that being said, what is very helpful to me and maybe helpful to you as well is just looking for small ways that you can support other people who are really struggling with this, whether you have friends who are directly affected, whether you support a small business that in some way is helping in the crisis and multiple crises that are going on in the world. And just feeling like you're doing a little something can be very empowering and uplifting during this difficult time. So I didn't want to let another episode go by with everything that's unfolded in this past few weeks, but really this past few months. It is a challenging time and a heart-wrenching time for so many in the world. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and let you know that it's okay to feel mixed emotions. It's okay to have times where you feel happy and joyous and you're celebrating or you're having a joyful moment, while at the same time acknowledging what's happening in the world and feeling that sadness. It is okay and it is normal. There is so many mixed emotions happening right now, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. All right, so with that, it actually kind of ties in a little bit to today's topic because I do know so many of us are struggling with what's going on in the world. But there are also other things that we may be struggling with internally that are completely invisible. So recently I started watching the show Lessons in Chemistry on Apple TV. It's brand new. It stars Brie Larson. It's so well written. I'm only a couple episodes in, but I'm really enjoying it. And I had planned to do this topic for quite a while. And then watching the first couple episodes of this show really solidified for me the need to discuss this. And that is invisible struggles, invisible disabilities, invisible challenges, because everybody you come across, everyone you know is fighting some sort of a battle, is struggling with something that you can't see. And most of us have heard that famous quote that says, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. And that is so true. And that includes me, and that includes you, that includes everybody. And so approaching our days with a little more compassion is so important, and not just compassion for others, but compassion for ourselves and the invisible struggles and the invisible disabilities that we are working through, right? So in the show Lessons in Chemistry, I thought they did a beautiful job in the first couple of episodes, really showing some of the internal struggle that this main character played by Brie Larson is dealing with herself. And she's this brilliant chemist who shines so bright and knows who she is, but yet she has this struggle that others don't know about. And it's really difficult for her. And I thought they did a beautiful job of showing both sides of that. And so that really inspired me to record this episode for you today. So I posted a quote recently that said, treat everyone else as if their heart is still healing too. And that quote is from my book, Operation Happiness. But when I posted it, it really resonated with so many people because our hearts are always healing from something. We're always going through something in life. That is part of life. Life is not perfect, happy, joyful all the time. And I talk quite a bit about the 80-20 principle, the 80-20 rule, and I really think that applies in life too. And sometimes it's, different ratio than 80-20, but I like to say a good balance is 80-20. We're always going to be struggling with some things or through some things. Some of them are temporary and some are permanent. And I think that as much as I don't like assumptions, the one thing that it's always safe for all of us to assume is that everyone we meet is struggling with something that we can't see or that we don't know or don't understand, right? And so another great example of this is I think in travel, the TSA, and I want to give them a shout out. They do a really amazing job and they work so hard on keeping our country safe, keeping air travel safe. But I do think they need work in recognizing that there are people that are struggling with invisible traumas and invisible disabilities and that they could be more sensitive to that, right? A few years ago, I was traveling and I had a back injury and I struggled to even walk, let alone bend over. And I was randomly selected to remove my shoes, even though I'm TSA pre. And I tried to explain to the gate agent, hey, this is a real struggle for me. I can't bend over. I need help taking off my shoes and putting them back on. And they were quite rude, I have to say, or this one individual was quite rude, didn't handle it well, forced me to sit down in a chair and said if I didn't remove my shoes and then put them back on, I wouldn't be allowed on my flight, and didn't offer me help in any way. The lack of compassion, the lack of training really about these types of things, just because they couldn't see my physical challenge did not mean it wasn't there. And it really didn't sit well with me, but it really did also get me thinking about how so many people deal with invisible disabilities, invisible emotional trauma, invisible challenges of different kinds. And they go through their days and they feel alone and they're struggling alone with it because I think as a society, we don't do enough to really acknowledge this and make people feel seen. And the one thing I know is true is that everyone listening to this, and including myself, is dealing with some sort of challenge or battle that others maybe don't know about. So I'm going to share something really personal about me that even some of my closest friends don't know. And this is both an invisible emotional struggle, but also an invisible disability. And I've got a few that I deal with, and I've talked about a couple on the show. But what I'm going to share with you now is that I deal with a very, very severe case of claustrophobia. And this only came up a few years ago. I never struggled with this before in my life. And literally one day I was sitting in the back of a long booth at a restaurant with people on either side of me so that I was trapped in this booth. And all at once, this feeling of panic came over me and I had to get out of there. And there were like 4 or 5 people to my right and to my left. And I couldn't exactly ask them all to please get up. But that's what I did. I was on such a verge of panic and fight or flight. I turned to the person in my left and said, I have to get out. I need to step out for a minute. And of course, everybody was lovely and stepped out of the booth and let me out. But I think they assumed I needed to use the restroom. But really, I just had to get out of there. And then I asked, could I sit on the end? And I traded places. But I was left with this confusion, like, what just happened? And then a few months later, it happened to me again. I was on a crowded bus in a different country while I was traveling, and I was sitting against the window, and they folded down seats in the middle of the aisle so that once you were seated, other people could take seats in the middle of the aisle, and there was no way to get up and get out or stand up. And I started to have the same feeling overwhelming me. And I was grabbing onto my husband, like telling him what was going on. And I really had to work not to have a panic attack. And I realized, wow, this is claustrophobia is what this is. And I went to see my doctor about it, who explained that they are doing a lot of work in the areas of neuroscience because they do believe this is actually physiological, that it's changes in the brain that take place that can affect the way a person's natural responses to being trapped come to the surface. And so that was great insight for me to realize, okay, this could be something natural that is happening with me inside my brain. And then I really did some work to learn how to manage it and learn how to avoid situations where that might be triggered. And I'm waiting for more research to come out on this. And so if you've got claustrophobia, you're not alone. And I want to share with you all, this is really personal. It is so bad that I can't even wear gel nail polish because I can't stand to have things on my body that I can't remove. Even those little wristbands, when you go to concerts, I have to ask to have them put on very loosely so that I can slide it off my finger because otherwise it arises some of those feelings of panic. And that for me is a struggle. And I'm still working through it. And I wanted to share that with all of you because I do think everybody is dealing with something that they are uncomfortable talking about that other people can't see, right? But I have worked hard to become more comfortable talking about my claustrophobia. And now I even joke about it with friends, but in a serious way. And they're compassionate with me and they understand. And my closest friends that do know about this are very respectful of letting me sit on the outside of booths or in the aisle seat on an airplane if I need to, and really support me in that area. So that is one of my personal struggles. And I wanted to share that just so everyone listening knows that they are not alone with whatever it is that they might be struggling with, that you might be struggling with, right? Like that quote says, everyone is fighting a battle that we know nothing about. And I don't like assumptions, as I mentioned, but assuming that everybody is struggling with something is such a beautiful place to approach the world, right? It has compassion to it. We can always assume somebody might need assistance or maybe that they're not feeling seen or heard, right? So any way that we can help people feel seen, maybe offer to help, or even just offer to be a compassionate ear is a way that we can be a light in this area. And more compassion with ourselves too, and knowing that there's no shame in struggling with something internally or having an invisible disability of some kind. So I want to talk about three key areas that different people are affected in an invisible way so that we can open our hearts and our minds up not only to our own struggles, but to the struggles of others, because these kinds of things can really trigger anger responses, trauma responses. They can trigger us or other people to act like total jerks, right? And it's not that that person is a jerk, is that is a response. The way they're behaving is a result of some kind of a struggle that they're having that maybe we can't see. It goes back to that saying, hurt people hurt people. I actually like to say hurting people hurt people. People who are hurting can lash out in different ways that can maybe not be well received by others, but when we can know that it's because other people are struggling, right? Or maybe somebody is really quiet and they're like disappearing and you haven't heard from a friend for a while. They may be struggling with something that we don't see or know about, right? So 3 areas that really cover most of the invisible disabilities, invisible challenges, invisible struggles. Number 1, invisible physical challenges, right? In the physical realm. So this could be a back injury that maybe you don't see, but is causing somebody chronic pain. This could be maybe a bad knee. This could be an autoimmune disease that we don't see, but that causes somebody to struggle and have to work extra hard each day in their life, right? There are so many things that fall under invisible physical challenges. And you know what? Most everybody has some sort of an invisible physical challenge, right? If you wear contact lenses, what's going to happen if you don't have your glasses or contacts for a day? You're going to have a really hard time seeing, right? That's a physical challenge. That's a physical disability that not everybody can see. And if you do wear contacts, which I do, and I wear glasses sometimes too, but if you wear contacts, it's not one that people immediately know about you. So Another one is maybe a hearing loss of some kind, right? Me, I have chronic tinnitus, which is a chronic ringing of the ears. And everybody knows what it's like when their ears ring for a few seconds, maybe after a loud sound, or sometimes even just for no reason, your ears will ring for a few seconds. Chronic tinnitus is when it's every day, maybe for hours at a time. This started with me a couple years ago, and I've been to many doctors about it, not sure why, but it does affect my hearing, especially in loud situations. And I know there are a lot of people that struggle to hear. Maybe your hearing is perfectly fine when it's one-on-one, right? But people sometimes struggle to hear in crowded situations. I think being more compassionate and more sensitive to what other people are dealing with physically that we may not know about is a big, big thing. And I think being more patient, more compassionate, and even more vulnerable with our own challenges. Vulnerable meaning, don't be afraid to let people know if you need help. Don't be afraid to talk about it with friends. Don't be afraid to get help, because these kinds of things can be heavy on our mental health too, right? All right. The second area is invisible emotional challenges. So this could be anxiety. This could be stored trauma. This could be even just like an overall sense of blahness or mediocrity in our life, right? Or this could be past things that have happened to us that are rising up to cause issues now. And this is why I thought they did such a beautiful job of this in those first couple episodes of the show I mentioned earlier. The just past things that can come up, because we don't see this in people, but always assume that somebody has been through something in their life that they're still healing from, right? And I know that that's me, and that's probably you listening. And you can probably think about what that is. And I think self-compassion and compassion for others in this area, more understanding on a deeper level, compassion raised across the board throughout the world would make such a beautiful difference and bring so much light. All right. So the third area, which may be the most overlooked, is invisible spiritual challenges. So there are so many people, and I've heard this so many times in different conversations, dealing with struggles with a lack of spiritual connection, right? Which I believe we all need in some way in our life to feel that sense of wholeness and to feel grounded, whether you connect with nature or God or the universe or whatever that means to you. Having small spiritual practices and having that sense of connection and connection with others who resonate on the same levels we do is so important. But I also think there are a lot of people that are dealing with internal challenges that we can't see, that are invisible, that are resulting from ways that they were raised in various areas of organized religion. And now as adults, they're really struggling with things they were taught that maybe they don't believe to be true now, or that aren't resonating with them anymore. And this can create a real internal struggle, and it can affect our nervous system. It can affect our emotional health. And I think this is a bigger conversation to be had. And to find somebody who's a confidant in this area, whether it's a spiritual counselor, whether it's a dear friend, whether it is a trusted family member who knows everything you've been through in this area, it's so important to open up about it and to acknowledge your mixed feelings or acknowledge whatever feelings you have about it, and to be vulnerable in this area, because those are really big steps in healing. And this really is an invisible struggle. And this is one that so many people keep buried deeply, when really talking about it and acknowledging it can be so healing. So these are the three areas that I really feel that most, if not all of us, are dealing with one or more of these in some way. And I wanted to acknowledge it on this episode and just let you know that you are seen and you are valued and your feelings are real and they deserve attention and compassion and taking steps toward healing. And by the way, there are some things that are going to be with us forever, right? Whether it is something that broke our heart, and grief, right? Grief, I don't believe ever fully goes away. I believe it becomes part of us and we learn to live with it. And sometimes things can trigger it and it bubbles up to the surface, right? And we have to be able to acknowledge that that's there. And so many things we've been through are like this. And they take on different forms over the years, right? And we learn and grow through them. But some of these things don't always go away. Time does not heal all wounds, whether they're physical or emotional, and whether they're visible or invisible. sometimes we have to learn techniques and tools and frameworks to work through these and to handle them and manage them and help heal them and get them to levels where they don't affect us as much anymore. But when we're in it, it can be a real struggle. And the tendency to want to go inward is there, and it's very real. But talking to others and being open about your struggles can not only help you. I know it's been helpful to me to really talk about these things and acknowledge them and even find humor in them, but also it lets other people know they're not alone. I've told so many people about my claustrophobia, and they're like, oh my gosh, my aunt struggled with that so bad, or I used to have that and I really worked through it and now I'm so much better. It's amazing how people open up when you share your own struggles. And so I think that's really important. So 3 key things here to keep in mind. Number 1, of course, ask for help and ask others how you might be of help, right? If you know somebody who might be down or acting angrily or just a little, off, someone be like, how can I support you? Are you struggling with anything right now? How can I be there for you? Do you need to talk? And for yourself, ask for help. Don't be afraid if you need help taking off your shoes to ask for it. If you need help with something emotionally, if you need to talk, to seek out help, there is no shame in that. In fact, it is not only healing for you, it's healing for the people you reach out to. We all need to talk about all of these things more. And number 2, know that you are not alone. Everyone is struggling in some way, invisibly, with something. And at the same time, be very aware in the way that you're going about your days and see how you might create shifts to make other people feel more seen and valued, and also to see yourself more. Right? Because sometimes we don't take the time to really look in the mirror into our own eyes or to really talk to ourselves and say, I love you. I'm listening. You are valid. Your feelings are valid. Are those beautiful words? To say those to ourselves and to other people is magical. And the third thing we can do is really tap deeply into compassion. And I mentioned this earlier, and at the risk of sounding repetitive, compassion is the key here, both self-compassion and compassion for others. And sometimes the people who are the hardest to love or the hardest to like or the hardest to want to reach out to and help are the ones who need it the most. The people who are acting out angrily or who maybe aren't so pleasant to be around, a lot of that comes because there are things that they're really struggling with and they just need to feel seen and heard and loved and valued, right? And the same goes for us too. And I know that when I look back in my life on the times that were not my shining moments, and we all have those. Have you ever been kicked out of a bar or a restaurant or a public facility? I think so many of us have had those moments, right? Have you ever had a moment where you lashed out at someone you love and you're like, oh my gosh, who was that? Who is this person? I think that being able to recognize that and see where it really is coming from is so key. And knowing that others that act out in this way, that there is something else underneath, right? An underlying cause. And that comes from a foundation of compassion. And so tapping into that in our lives is magical. And look into the mirror today and say those magical words. Look into your own eyes deeply. You'll be surprised by the emotions this will spark. And say the words you've been longing to hear. You don't have to wait to hear them from other people. You can say them to yourself. Just start with, I love you. Look into your eyes and say, I love you. And I've talked about mirror work before on the show, and I talk about it within my signature program, The Joy School. You can find more information about The Joy School over on my website. But really, this is so important, and it is such a beautiful thing for self-compassion and connecting deeply with our own soul and everything that we're longing to hear and validating ourselves, right? And supporting ourselves. Because when we are supportive of ourselves in these areas, that's when we can really start being more of a light and more supportive for others in these areas too. So please begin going about your days, if you're not already, knowing that we're all in this together, and everybody you come across each day is struggling with something that you can't see and maybe don't know about. And if you do know about your friend's struggle that's invisible, check in with them now and then. Say, hey, how are you doing with that? Can I support you in any area, right? That sparks conversation and vulnerability that really can be very healing and uplifting. All right. So with that brings me to the section of the show called the Joy School Habits, where I like to share an actionable step or a new habit you can create that will have big payoff, but doesn't require a ton of effort. So for this week's Joy School habit, I want you to begin taking regular inventory of the toxins in your life. And I've talked about this on the show before. Many people who follow me know how I feel about all of the toxins in our food system, in cleaning supplies, in just everyday objects that we bring into our homes. There are so many chemicals and toxins in the air we breathe, in and around our existence. And while we can't get away from all of it, we can take steps to reduce and eliminate so many of them. And I want to give a shout out to California because it was just announced this past week. The state of California has become the first state to ban 4 major food additives that were known to just be terrible for people, right? You can Google California food additives ban and you can read all about it. And what I'm hoping is that this is going to set a precedent for something to be done nationwide. And it's a small step, right? Because just 4 chemicals being banned, there are so many others in our environment, but we're aware of so many, right? I encourage you to do some research on this. Follow people on social media who talk about this topic. I have given a shout out often before to Vani Hari, who is the food babe over on Instagram and on social. She's got a blog and she talks quite a bit about toxins in foods, right? But they're not just in foods. They're in your cleaning supplies. They're in your laundry detergents. They're in everyday objects that you purchase. They're in candles. They're in so many things we're exposed to. In this world we're in today, we can't get away from all of it. But with taking small steps and making small shifts, we can drastically reduce the toxins that we and our family are exposed to. So do some research on this. Just take a few minutes and then look around your home and look at what might be toxic or contain toxins that you're breathing in or that you're being exposed to through your skin or just everyday living, that you can either swap those products out or those things out or just eliminate them altogether, right? Cleaning supplies are first place to look. Personal care products, makeup, cosmetics, shampoos, body washes, soaps, all of these things. There are wonderful alternatives that do not have all of the toxins and chemicals, my friends, and the foods you're eating, the food additives. So I recently discovered through working with my doctors that I was dealing with an allergy to some kind of a food additive, likely an artificial coloring, and we still have not figured out which one it is. And I've been having hives on and off. But since I really started paying more attention to this and absolutely cutting out artificial colors from things, I've drastically reduced these reactions. So hopefully we'll nail down which one it is at some point. But even just reducing all of that has been a great feeling for me. And I know I'm doing good for my body and for my life. So take a look, take an inventory, and then create the habit of doing this maybe annually, right? Maybe right after New Year's or right after your birthday. Go through all your life and all the things you're exposed to and see where you can reduce your exposure to toxins and chemicals. All right. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be so grateful if you would leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. This really helps the show reach more people, and I do read them all. Or leave a review if you don't listen over on Apple. Leave a review on your favorite platform. And thank you so much to all of you who have already left reviews. I am so grateful, and they really do help people find the show who might also enjoy it. And please share with your friends on social media, and be sure to connect with me over on Facebook and Instagram. I love connecting with all of you. I do run my own platforms. It is me there connecting with you, and I love hearing from you. And you can visit my website at KristiLingSpencer.com, where you can download some free gifts, including access to my brand new video masterclass, 11 Habits of the Happiest People. And there's some other supportive resources and articles for you there as well at KristiLingSpencer.com, including all the information about my brand new signature membership program, The Joy School, where we go into depth on all of these topics, and I share frameworks and actionable steps to really level up your life and increase joy, increase success, increase personal peace. super excited about this program. So that is all at KristiLingSpencer.com, or you can go to jointhejoyschool.com for all the latest information. All right, thank you so much for being here. I am, as always, so grateful to connect with you, sending you so much love. And until next time, remember, you've got what it takes to create more amazing days. And more amazing days make up a pretty amazing life. Have a fantastic week, my beautiful friends, and I will see you soon. Cheers.